These are some RPGs that I recommend to fans of Octopath Traveler who don't know what to play next. Starting off with Bravely 1 and 2, or Bravely Default and Bravely 2nd. Bravely 1 and 2 basically have a very similar battle system to Octopath Traveler and the use of battle points. I believe it's actually a concept unique to Octopath Traveler and to Bravely 1 and 2. Essentially, what you can do in Bravely 1 and 2 is you can choose to default, which means to acquire battle points by defending, or you can expend them by using Bravely moves. And that's very similar to what you can do in Octopath Traveler, where you just acquire battle points. Well, now in Bravely Default, you have to actually use the defend mechanic to build up those battle points. So it's a little more strategic than in Octopath Traveler. You have to be a little more active in acquiring your battle points, but it's definitely very similar to fans of Octopath Traveler. And also, I'd be remiss to not talk about the fact that Octopath Traveler is actually a spiritual successor to the SaGa games. Now, the SaGa series, like Romancing Saga, it goes all the way back to the original Game Boy with the Final Fantasy Legend 1, 2, and 3 games. Now, the thing about that is that they really haven't aged as well, and that might be a bit of a huge step for fans of Octopath to go all the way back that far. So instead, I'm thinking I'd lean toward recommending Romancing Saga 2 for the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch. It's basically an HD remaster of the Super Nintendo title Romancing Saga 2. Now, there's also another game that's probably a little closer even still, and that would be SaGa Frontier, which has a pretty impressive graphical skill set. It's not in high definition, but it looks really good anyway on PlayStation if you have one of those accessible, and might be just what you're looking for to scratch that Octopath Traveler itch. And now I'm going to talk about some games that aren't exactly like Octopath Traveler, but you know what? I think that they're worth looking into anyway. JKB had actually already played Final Fantasy VII a long while back, and I'm guessing there's probably quite a few people out there who did that as well. And if you're looking for more games like Final Fantasy VII, and maybe you've already played Final Fantasy IX and not really sure where to go from there, I would recommend checking out Legend of Dragoon, which I actually did a full review of longer ago than I care to admit. It has a combo system that uses rapid button presses, very similar to QuickTime events that allow you to rack up huge amounts of damage in combos, and I do recommend that if you do choose to play this game, make sure you find a way to play it with relatively low amounts of lag, because it really does require very precise timing. Like, if you can't play Guitar Hero on this setup, you probably can't play Legend of Dragoon. So it's definitely going to require some precise timing, otherwise you're just going to end up with a pile of frustration. But how about something more classic? For people who have played Octopath Traveler but, haven't really caught up on anything up to this point. They've never played an RPG before this. When I think of classics, I think of the Super Nintendo classics personally, and that means Chrono Trigger. Chrono Trigger is usually at least in the discussion, if not at the very top of top lists of the best Super Nintendo RPGs, if not the best RPGs of all time. Now, I'm not necessarily going to say it's better than Final Fantasy VI, but it's been a lot longer for me since I haven't really played Final Fantasy VI in a very long time. But I can say that Chrono Trigger has aged very well, and so I can still recommend that to everybody. And it also gets rid of a lot of the things that might have annoyed you about Octopath Traveler, like it doesn't have random battle encounters. You can see where the enemy encounters are on the map, and you can sometimes evade them, or you can at least just not be surprised by them. And you know that if you get lost, you won't be just hammered by them all the time. It's pretty handy. And there's also dual and triple text that you can perform with other members of your party, which can be super helpful and make you feel almost as powerful as you do when you play Octopath Traveler and just nail that sequence of events that give you the... Well, let's not talk about Octopath too much though. Long story short is that despite its age, Chrono Trigger is still a very pretty looking game, and it's very engaging to play. And also, when we're talking about Super Nintendo RPGs, the one that actually got me into RPGs, which you could find out about over here, was Earthbound. Earthbound is a Super Nintendo RPG that's a little more traditional. It's very much like Dragon Quest games, but it has a really unique writing style that it's famous for that gives it a lot of quirk. It's a very fun game, it's a very funny game, and it also doesn't feature random encounters. Though it's not as flashy as something like Chrono Trigger or Octopath, it's definitely known for its writing, and I think that alone should entice you to check it out, especially if you have a Super Nintendo Classic, because that's probably one of the more affordable ways to play the game unless you have a Wii U. So Super Nintendo Classic is probably the way you want to go if you want to play Earthbound. But maybe, just maybe, you actually are interested in that turn-based combat, that traditional combat that you can find in Earthbound. Well, if that's the case, then look no further than Dragon Quest VIII. Dragon Quest actually established the formula that so many video games have copied over the years, including Earthbound and Pokemon, if you've ever played that. Now, Dragon Quest VIII is, I think, probably the best Dragon Quest game that there's ever been. Now, I haven't played 11 yet because that's not out yet. So if you're watching in the future and Dragon Quest 11 is better than 8, please don't bother telling me about it in the comments because I've heard it 1,000 times already. As of right now, Dragon Quest VIII is fantastic to play on either the PlayStation 2 or the 3DS. If you have a 3DS or if you have a PlayStation 2, whatever you have it on, I recommend that you play it on it because that game was awesome. But maybe you're the exact opposite. Maybe you're only interested in the really new stuff. Maybe this Chrono Trigger, this Earthbound, this Dragon Quest VIII, that just doesn't appeal to you. Well, you know what? I also have something for you guys, and that is Persona 5, which is a game that you might almost mistake it for having more style than substance, but don't let the game's flashy graphics fool you, because the game is actually very deep and very, very fun. I have another review of that which I recommend that you check out, and if you are interested, it is on PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4. So Persona 5 actually has a lot of mechanics that you wouldn't have seen in Octopath Traveler, including social link building, which is sort of like a dating sim style mechanic, or visual novel, which is something that a lot of RPGs these days feature. So if that's something that you're interested in, definitely check out Persona 5. But you know I can't really make a list of recommendations without talking about something completely off the wall and completely different from everything else, and that's because it's something a little more action-oriented. I wanted to talk one last time about Terranigma, and Terranigma is such an amazing action RPG for the Super Nintendo that never came out in the United States. So how are you gonna play this? Well, you kinda have to download it and play it illegally. But you know what? It's worth it. Hashtag worth it. Terranigma is a game that we're never going to see in the United States, and unless you want to pay hundreds of dollars for an English copy from Great Britain or from Australia, I don't know why you would, the game is so good. I also have a video talking about this as well. Funny thing that, it's just a very fluid action RPG from the Super Nintendo, and nothing released ever since then has actually, in my opinion, been any better than this. This is as good as it gets for 2D action RPGs. In fact, I like it so much that pretty soon I'm going to be streaming it from start to finish. I'm going to be playing this game in its entirety in one sitting, just like I did for Earthbound a couple months ago. So keep your eyes out for that, because that's going to be a lot of fun, and man, I've been jonesing for some Terranigma. But anyways, thank you for joining me, and if you have games that you think would be good for fans of Octopath Traveler that I didn't talk about, and I'm sure there are a lot, please be sure to leave a comment down in the video comments down below telling people what I left out, because, you know, everybody has their blind spots, and I'm sure that there's some really good ones that I did not include on this list, like Grandia, which, oh my god, it's such a good... You know what? Just you come up with your list, I'll come up with my list of games that I didn't remember, and I'll see you guys next time.